December or June, for my heart sings a wonderful tune. As long as you care for me.
Thank you very, very much. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your wonderful welcome. I'm happy to be with all of you again.
What you've just viewed is the opening segment of a television show that was the payoff after years of struggling and hard work for Walter Valentino Liberace.
Don Feddersen, producer of My Three Sons and Family Affair, was responsible for Liberace's first TV show. Network executives had turned Liberace down, thinking no one would watch a piano player. There was no action. But Feddersen persisted, got the half-hour show on TV, and the rest was history. The station fought off sponsors. Then came syndication. Critics panned the show, forgetting that only the public can make a star. Liberace not only held on to his ratings and audience, ultimately the program was carried on over 200 American stations plus 20 foreign countries.
A chronological accounting of the life of Liberace would be exceedingly difficult. Therefore, what you're about to view is various segments in his life which led to the acceptance of a unique talent who preferred to be called an entertainer, not a pianist. Much of what you're about to see came from Liberace's personal photographs and films, which he had transferred to video.
And where better to start than with Salvatore Liberace and Frances Zukowski, his father and mother.
Salvatore Sam Liberace was born in Formosa, Italy in 1885. In 1902, at the age of 17, he emigrated to America and met Polish-American Frances Zukowski. They married in 1910. 4 children were born to this marriage: George in 1911, Angelina in 1914, Liberace Walter Valentino in 1919, and Rudy in 1931. Liberace was a twin child. The other was stillborn. A French horn player, Sam, to bolster the family's income, bought a store which was managed by Frances.
Oh, here's some wonderful pictures of my high school days. I started up a little dance orchestra in school, and it was called the Mixer Orchestra.
Lee's first job was playing a piano in a local bar. He played the part of Haile Selassie in a school play.
And then came graduation from high school, the class of 37. And I remember I was full of ambition and plans for the future.
Sam and Frances, musically inclined, encouraged their children to take music lessons. George's interest was playing the violin. And at age 17, he had turned professional. It was the day of the big bands. George joined the Orrin Tucker Orchestra. The many one-night stands throughout the country was to provide George a background which eventually was of great value to Liberace. The Steel Pier in Atlantic City was a long way from entering the world of gambling. Crowds enjoyed the music, the ocean, and the dance of the moment, the jitterbug. Playing at military bases, it was evident that preparations were being made for World War II.
My brother joined the Seabees in the Navy, and we made a promise that when he got out of the service, he would join me in a nightclub act, which I began preparing.
Growing tired of playing local engagements for $40 or $50 a week, with business card in hand, Walter Liberace, pianist, headed for New York. Little dreaming that the first of trademarks was to be discovered. A candelabra. The war was over. George, discharged from the Navy, returned home. This close-knit and caring family was together again. Lee, never far away from the kitchen, joined Mum. Sam, undoubtedly, was considering the fate of his son Walter, the pianist.
Okay, Joe, who was Walter Buster Keys?
I'll bet you're going to tell me it was Liberace.
Absolutely correct, playing whenever and wherever. In order not to conflict with his classical image, he used this funny fictitious name. A series of 3 events would lead him to the pinnacle of the entertainment spectrum. One such event occurred in La Crosse, Wisconsin.
Liberace had concluded a classical program. He asked for requests. At that time, there was a novelty tune called The Three Little Fishies. Now, someone in the audience, thinking that this would throw a classical pianist, requested it. Liberace had acquired a unique talent for reading his audiences. He'd learned just how much charm and music he could combine to keep the audience involved. He played The Three Little Fishies in classical form. With a wink and his charming smile, he shared this musical joke with his audience and immediately won them over. He was on his way.
At this time in life, on his way didn't mean he'd arrived. Lee's talents were not confined to the piano. His artistic talent began to surface as he spent time hand-painting ties, wallpaper, and clothing. There was a time when he even hand-painted all of his Christmas cards.
An entertainer is often judged with little knowledge of the hardships endured in their climb to success.
After years of struggle, some are eventually declared an overnight success. Liberace is an example. His early youth was hampered by the Depression, making it difficult to concentrate on his music. World War II interrupted George Liberace's contributions to his brother's success.
In 1941, Liberace came out to California, confident that he had the key to what the public wanted. His style of partly classical and cocktail lounge piano caused the critics to comment that he was a mediocre pianist. He refused to be swayed by the critics' attacks.
California was less responsive to the young maestro. It took him 8 years of travel and hard work before he won any measure of recognition. In later years, every knock became a boost.
He first came to Las Vegas in 1944. His first engagement was at the Last Frontier for $750 a week, which was doubled after his opening. Little dreaming that in 1954 he'd be the highest paid entertainer in Las Vegas at $50,000 per week.
Liberace may have had the key to success, but the door wasn't ready to open. In 1944, Las Vegas was a sleepy resort town. There was no Strip as we know it today. The few resorts, the Last Frontier being one of them, catered to the gambler and those who made it an overnight stop on a journey elsewhere. With few distractions, it was easy to discover the talents of an artist such as Liberace. Clowning around a relic of the past, he was unaware that his gold rush days were not far away.
There were 3 events in the evolution of Liberace. Playing Three Little Fishies at the end of his classical concert in La Crosse, Wisconsin. The Hollywood Bowl, where he changed into something a little more spectacular. White full-dress tails. A bold concept for 1952. The press was quick to pick up on it, the audience loved it, the critics raved.
The third event, the Candelabra. In 1940, while Liberace was playing as intermission pianist in the Persian Room at the New York Plaza, he had seen the movie A Song to Remember, a story about the life of Chopin. In one scene, a candelabra was placed on the piano, revealing to the audience of critics that they were hearing Chopin and not Liszt playing the piano.
After seeing the movie, Liberace stopped by an antique shop and purchased a silver-plated candelabra for $15. Back at the hotel, he came out for his intermission stint carrying the candelabra.
He proceeded to light the candles one by one before he started to play. The otherwise noisy room began to quiet down as people watched.
The piano player with the candelabra was the talk of the town.
Webster defines candelabra as a branched, highly ornamental candlestick. To Liberace, it was a highly identifiable prop, an important trademark. And so this candelabra, piano, an easily recognized signature, identified this one-of-a-kind personality. The title Mr. Showmanship was to come later. As we take these side trips in the life of this master showman, you'll discover little-known interests. Few knew, for example, that at one time Liberace owned a racehorse, yet his racing silks should have left little doubt about ownership. In his home in Las Vegas, on the ceiling leading to the master bath, you'd find this artwork, consisting of 3 cherubs dancing on a keyboard. P.T. Barnum might have coined the phrase, the greatest show on earth, but Liberace provided it.
Would you believe Liberace's dad wanted him to become an undertaker?
No.
Salvatore, Sam, knew only too well the road to the top was a rough and bumpy one. Liberace found little beauty in his childhood, living in a nondescript house in a nondescript neighborhood. He hated shabbiness. He'd walk 27 blocks and pay 15 cents to sit in a clean movie theater when he could have walked 5 blocks and paid only a nickel to sit in an old dirty one.
Other than the movies, Liberace's only escape was found in playing the piano. And the closest he ever came to being an undertaker came years later when he played the part of a casket salesman in the 1965 MGM movie, The Loved One.
Lee's father wanted him to follow a profession that wouldn't suffer during hard times, and the success of his television program of the 50s made him a strong candidate for a movie career. The Loved Ones was the last movie made. A cameo appearance in When the Boys Meet the Girls was his first. He played the part of a honky-tonk piano player in South Sea Sinner, which starred Shelley Winters. Starring in the feature Sincerely Yours, he played the part of a concert pianist who lost his hearing. In the movie, he gave consideration to suicide, but like all good movies at that time, he regained his hearing, and he got the girl. His middle name was Valentino, and he certainly was qualified to play that part. What woman could resist the charms of this handsome, attentive idol? Lee was engaged to be married 3 times, but he was married to his music. His mistress was his audience. This precluded the dedication that went with marriage. He liked to squire women and admitted they should be ones other men admired. He became seriously involved with Sonia Henney. As the saying goes in Hollywood, they became an item. It was the closest to Cupid's arrow finding its mark. Henney, Olympic champion and movie star, was booked in Las Vegas. Used to applause, she may have been the ideal mate for Liberace, but this never came to pass.
In 1952, Liberace was to play at the Hollywood Bowl in California. Concerned that the sold-out audience of 20,000 wouldn't see him against the black tuxedos of the orchestra, Liberace opted for white tails to make certain he would be seen. This startling costume for a concert performance prompted one reporter to ask Liberace what he planned to wear for his next engagement. Liberace looked at his sister sitting next to him wearing gold lame. He promptly replied, "A gold lame dinner jacket." This was the day that put him on a shuttle to stardom. Mr. Showmanship had arrived, and the world of entertainment bowed to the spectacular.
The Hollywood Bowl started what Liberace claims to be a very expensive joke. It provided the opportunity that would one day earn him the title Mr. Showmanship. Performers didn't feel they had arrived until they played the Palace Theater. He played the Palace in New York. He played the Palace in Las Vegas. Lee's national publicist, Jamie James, had this to say.
He knew then that gimmicks work, so the costumes were one that would actually premiere in Las Vegas.
This unique entertainer captured the attention of all. From the RKO Golden Gate on the Pacific Coast to the RKO Palace on the Atlantic. WNBC Radio in New York. The Radio City Music Hall. He broke a 50-year attendance record there with his Easter Spectacular. A talent of this magnitude did not escape the eye of Her Majesty, the Queen of England. Along with other greats who had appeared before her, Liberace was so honored. No matter where he appeared, crowds surrounded Mr. Showmanship. As Edward P. Helene of the Milwaukee Sentinel put it, and we quote, "Besides the beer that made Milwaukee famous, there are Alfred Lunt, Gilda Gray, Hildegard, and Liberace. And the greatest of these, box office-wise, is Liberace."
He was one of us. He could laugh at himself and had as much fun as his audience. There wasn't anything he wouldn't try if it entertained his audience. He wasn't Sinatra, but he sang. He wasn't Astaire, but he danced. He wasn't Richard Burton, but he tried acting. And he wasn't any better than many of us. Outrageous costumes flying over the stage, all for the delight of his audience. He remembered well his early struggles, and he gave other outstanding artists opportunities he never had. He was Mr. Showmanship.
A rich sense of humor and the ability to appear in outrageous costumes. If there was ever a court jester that could please a king, it would be Liberace. While King George fiddles, Liberace danced with this charmer called Elvira. A little-known fact about Liberace was that he thought he'd like to be a dancer. He took dancing lessons so that he could include a bit of the dance into his shows, from a waltz to a soft shoe. And if you think it was easy, try rehearsing with the Radio City Music Hall's Rockettes.
Of all who are involved with an entertainer, the one who is in the most direct contact is the publicist. Now, whether promoting or defending, his or her phone is always the first to ring. Las Vegas's freelance publicist, Mary Reddig, was responsible for Liberace's local publicity.
Nick Naff, former executive director of publicity, public relations, and advertising for the International Hotel, later to become the Las Vegas Hilton, and Anna Natisse, Liberace's fur designer. Mary, we'll start with you. How long did you work with Liberace?
15 years until he died.
What do you remember most about him?
I think his courtesy, Robin, and the fact he was always so considerate. And if I would call him, speaking of phones ringing, if I would call him and give him a long list of things people wanted him to do, he would thank me for calling.
Wow, that's great. I know he had a very interesting home, and there was something very fun inside and outside the house. Tell us a little bit about that.
He had a large collection of dogs, most of which he had adopted, but a couple that had been pushed over the wall, and he'd adopted them because people knew he loved animals.
You mean more than 2 or 3?
Lots more than 2 or 3. Lots more than 2.
Now, Nick, Liberace was a very flamboyant person. Does that make it a publicist's dream or a nightmare?
Well, it could be a nightmare if it weren't that we were working with Liberace. There wasn't a more gentle, a more cooperative artist than Liberace. In fact, his showmanship was not based in ego. It was based in a desire to carry from the stage into the public, you know, as much of a show as he could possibly give to the public. He was so cooperative in that regard. It really was a dream.
Anna, when did you first meet with Liberace and become the fur designer?
Lee walked in my salon almost 18 years ago at the Dunes Hotel, and our relationship lasted till the last time I saw him in his Palm Springs home, just before he died.
What was the first fur you ever designed for him?
The Black Diamond Cape, who received a lot of national publicity with thousands and thousands of rhinestones and hundreds of tails. It was one of the most spectacular, very first show pieces he wore on stage.
And very expensive too, I bet.
Yes, very much. At the time, it cost $300,000. If we had to replace it now, it would cost perhaps more than $1 million.
I remember that fur. Mary, do you remember some of the other furs?
Of course, I remember that one because when he opened it on stage, it was blinded by all the rhinestones. But the one I particularly was associated was a white. Tell me again, Anna, what it was.
A white shadow fox.
Shadow fox that he
Yes,
wore on stage also.
Yes.
It had a long train. It was very
Yes.
spectacular.
Yes.
And for a London TV magazine, they wanted him photographed against the Las Vegas skyline in that wrap, which he was on a July day, very hot. And as soon as he got back to his house, he called me and he said, "Mary, you don't think they'll think I really wear things like that on the street, do you?"
Nick, do you remember any other photos that you were involved with Liberace?
Oh gosh, there were so many of them, and most of them spectacular, but there was one that was quite memorable. He allowed himself to be placed into a small sign company bucket and hoisted 60 feet into the air to light a candelabra that was being held by the famous Sunset Strip showgirl that was turning around. She was 40 feet high.
Oh my.
A daring man
Yes,
as well.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Anna, what do you think? Do you think there'll ever be as flamboyant a star as Liberace?
Never, never as a star or a human being or as a friend. Will never be another like you.
Thank you. Mary Reddick, Nick Knapp, Anna Natisse.
Nick Knapp mentioned Lee being hoisted above Sunset Boulevard for a publicity shot. Here he attempts to place some very uncooperative candles high above the Sahara Hotel on a hot day in Las Vegas. If you doubt it, take a look at the candles again. Known for being a good sport, able to take a joke as well as give one, he was willing to subject himself to many publicity gags that other performers would strenuously object to. Here's a typical gag shot that Liberace obviously enjoyed. Now there's a jackpot anyone would like to win. While he may have been hot with the slot machines, others had a way of cooling off this winning streak. It's obvious he enjoyed this publicity session, and so did his audience. Dedicating the first automation system for radio station KORK in Las Vegas. The Astro Train, then a futuristic means of rail travel, appeared. So did Liberace. He was tireless at autograph sessions, and when he ran out of photographs, at one such event, he later mailed 2,500 to fans who had been disappointed. At times, police provided protection from his many fans. He gave private concerts at convents. A home concert by Liberace so inspired this woman, it said she left her iron lung to attend his next concert in a wheelchair. He was always available to his fans. He knew presidents before they were elected, and remembered them when they were elected. At home with costumed gorillas and chimps, or the greats of show business, he knew them all.
It made us very happy to learn, ladies and gentlemen, that not only you were watching our shows, but other performers as well. and many of them invited me to be guest on their programs. Among them was Jimmy Durante, Red Skelton, but it was on the Jimmy Durante show that I surprised everyone with a new facet of entertainment for me, and that was dancing.
He wasn't always center stage. He applauds Oscar nominee Jeff Chandler, who portrayed Cochise in 2 movies of the 50s, Broken Arrow in 1950 and Battle of Apache Pass in 1952. Later, backstage, he clowns around with Chandler, a rifle and a coonskin hat. He appeared before the Queen and hammed it up with the King. At a golf tournament, he watched the greats of show business: Bing Crosby, Bob Hope, and yes, that's Marilyn Monroe standing next to him. Liberace, Mr. Showmanship, a talent never to be forgotten.
The burden of elaborate costuming, stage sets, staff, and opening acts had not yet arrived. There was still time for family get-togethers. Liberace's love for his mother was openly displayed.
Today, many stars recognize that Mom was instrumental in furthering their careers. Barry Manilow and Jeffrey Osborne are two who consider their mothers were the strength behind them in the elusive chase for success in the environment we call entertainment.
And so the Liberace family, close-knit, caring, obviously had an effect on Liberace. His audiences recognized this unique display of warmth and friendliness.
Brother George's home was the focal point for family get-togethers, a family that cared for and loved each other. Open displays of affection were common. It appeared that George was first to use symbols of his profession, and then again maybe George got the idea from Lee. Lee, less in demand, had time to relax and enjoy the family. When one critic accused Lee of momism, his answer was the question, since when has it been wrong to love one's mother? Liberace's mother had a sister, Anne, who at the age of 12 entered a convent. After taking the veil, she assumed the name Sister Marie de Sales. Her interest in music was obvious. A frequent visitor, she and nephew Lee entertained the rest of the family. But it was time to fulfill a promise made. He would build a great house for his mother.
I have everything my heart desired today.
The family continued to get together. Liberace, Rudy, and George. Liberace, Sister Angelina, and Mom. The press wasn't very kind to Lee, and the public display he showed for his mother. Whether in the audience or backstage, he openly acknowledged the woman who encouraged him to continue his career during the lean years. It was an affection he shared with Brother George as well. If there was ever a Santa Claus in the life of Frances Zukoski Liberace, it was her son, Walter. Remembering the Depression years, he vowed never to be poor again. His real estate holdings provided a means of fulfilling this promise.
I can remember being very, very poor once and making a promise to myself that if I could do anything about it, I'd never be poor again.
His publicist, Jamie James, comments.
His real estate investments, too, have always been sort of gut feelings. I mean, there's no big research that takes place. He just doesn't, but they've all made money.
When asked about his homes, Jamie James, his publicist for 20 years, said this was his answer.
Liberace always used to say, or we call him Lee, that, you know, you can only eat one piece of bread at a time. You can only put on one pair of pants at a time, and you know, that's one house. I said, why now? And he said, Jamie, I worked so hard all these years. They always told me that I had investments so that, you know, I could stop work tomorrow and spend as much as I wanted to the day I died, and I would still have money left. He said, but I couldn't see it. But he says, now with my homes, at least I can see why I worked so hard.
In Las Vegas, Liberace purchased 2 homes, joining them together to build this estate. Adding another story to the home, this stairway led to the Moroccan room and his rehearsal studio. This hallway, leading to the master bedroom, provided a means of joining the 2 homes. A reproduction of the Sistine Chapel ceiling was in the master bedroom, said to have taken over 2 years to complete. The doors closed on Liberace's 10,000 square foot home in Las Vegas, for on December 10th, 1988, it was sold at auction.
Liberace's insatiable curiosity and interest led to vast collections of antiques, unique gifts, cars, and homes. He himself said at one time, "I'm a collector."
This collection could only be found in a museum. What to do with all the various items he had stored? Buy some property, build a museum, sharing his success by giving it back to the public who had made it all possible. The Liberace Museum and Foundation for the Performing and Creative Arts.
Since its founding 10 years ago, the foundation has helped hundreds of students of the performing and creative arts. It currently funds scholarships for schools and colleges across the nation, assisting deserving and exceptional individuals.
When asked about the museum, Liberace had this to say.
It was one of my ambitions to be able to share all the things that I've acquired throughout my career with the people who made them possible. And these are some of the costumes I've worn through the years. Now, my current costumes that I'm wearing at the MGM will eventually wind up in the museum because I keep replenishing the costumes as I go along. And I spend about $1 million a year on my costumes. It's become a very expensive joke. But but the audience seems to love it, and as long as they do, I love wearing these wonderful costumes. It takes about 4.5 months to make one, and now I've added you know, very expensive craftsmanship to them, and they're adorned with precious jewels and expensive furs. I have one fur coat that I'm bringing to Australia. That's a white Norwegian fox that has a 12-foot train, and that's worth $350,000.
Anna Natisse, personal furrier and fur designer for Liberace. Anna, when Liberace first came to you, how had he heard about you?
I was told from Lee that when he was cruising in Europe, he heard my name from some very big European customers of mine, and mainly from Sofia, Princess Sofia, who is now the Queen of Spain. And he also discovered, which is the truth, that I did work for Sophia's mother, Queen Frederica.
So you were designing
Greece.
furs for European royalty, and then you started working with Liberace.
Yes.
American royalty.
Yes, Lee loved royalty.
Yeah.
Yes, I think he was just born with royalty in him. Yes.
As the fur designer, you must have had a lot of fittings and spent a lot of time with Liberace.
Yes.
How long did that take, and was that hard to do?
A lot of them. For each, all the fittings took place in my salon.
I love this look. Don't you? Now, this one buttons on this side.
The both sides.
Oh,
You want me to take this home,
Mike, and then bring it to
mine
Mike?
too? I mean,
Yeah,
go
all right,
fine. Let me take the coat to see.
It's just in the center front seam.
Annie will help you, Primo.
Annie will help.
Anna, the costumes just seemed to get more and more spectacular as the years went by. Do you remember any in particular?
Well, for instance, this is one of the most spectacular pieces we made. For Lee, I work with my dear friend and designer, Michael Travas. This particular piece is displayed at this time at the Liberace Museum. It's made from white shadow fox, lots and lots of fox tails, and brocade material with them, bucco beads and rhinestones and pearls. It's very beautiful.
In the costume gallery at the museum, this 50-pound, 118,000-carat rhinestone is on display. Liberace explains.
Very flattered. It took months, I understand, to create the stone. And it was all started because of the fact that I used so many Austrian rhinestones in my costumes, in my pianos, my cars. And the company president in Austria heard about this, came to New York to see my show. And this is his way of saying thank you to me for the country of Austria who produced it. In the various cases throughout the museum, you're going to find some very interesting mementos, some that have been given to me, some that I've been presented with through the years, like this wonderful violin that Jack Benny played on one of his television shows. And if you'll notice, it has his own candelabra on his violin. It's a bit much, but it got a big laugh. And of course, underneath is the French horn that really started the Liberace saga, if you want to call it that. This belonged to my father. When he came here from Italy, he joined the Philadelphia Orchestra and the John Philip Sousa Band, and eventually wound up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and where he met my mother. And then they began raising a family of musicians, and my brother George and I were two of the musicians in the family that stayed with it. We'll move over here to see some of the awards that I've been fortunate to receive through the years. The Governor's Award from the Governor of the state of Nevada, and the 2 Emmy Awards for my television series back in 1950s. For the best show, the best new performer of the year. I'm very proud of these 2 Emmys. And another Entertainer of the Year award. And this one was given to me when I made the movie Sincerely Yours at Warner Brothers, and this was the trophy I got for that movie. This is an ostrich egg, and inside of it is a miniature piano complete with candelabra. People have these things made for me, and they send them to the museum. I think this is one of the funny ones. Are you ready for this? This is a musical chamber pot. It's never been used, but it's so clever. I felt it needed a place in the museum. And a beautiful piano here, and as we move over here, you'll find that there's a collection of miniature pianos that number over 500 from all parts of the world. And I think one of the most unique ones is this one made by a man in Florida out of 10,000 toothpicks. It took him months and months to make this, and that's one of a kind pianos that I have in the museum. I've been an incurable collector for many years. I think I owe that to my first European visit back in the middle 1950s. I discovered the charm of old world antiques, and I began acquiring things then. And you'll find a lot of those things in the museum. But over here I have some very proud possessions that were presented to me when I went to England. I did one of 3 Royal Command performances, and this one was in 1978 when I appeared at the London Palladium for Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth, and I was presented with this beautiful jeweled piano by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth. And I also have a collection of china from John F. Kennedy, the late President of the United States. This is one of the plates that the great President had in his home. And I really am very proud of these things. I have here 2 dolls that represent Rudolph Valentino and Pola Negri. Pola Negri was to marry Valentino, and I even have the wedding chalices that were to be used to toast their wedding. But then he suddenly died, and he never did marry Pola Negri, but they were engaged to be married. And so this is Rudolph Valentino's collection here. I was named after him. Yeah, my middle name is Valentino, and I had a younger brother who was named Rudolph, and he passed away about 10 years ago. So we had a Rudolph Valentino in our family, and the reason for it, my mother, of course, was a great Rudolph Valentino fan. This piano is a Broadwood from London, and there's only one other in the Metropolitan Museum, which is not as old as this one. This one dates back to 1788, and it's priceless. And this is the piano I have that I use in my shows at the MGM and at the Hilton Hotel here in Las Vegas. And I always say, I'm glad you like my piano. There are only 2 in the whole world like it. And I got both of them. This piano here was actually played upon by Chopin. And it was also used in the movie based on his life, A Song to Remember. And as long as you're so close, this is the costume I wore at the Royal Command performance in London. And it's a copy of the coronation robes of King George V. His robes were adorned with ermine, and mine were adorned with chinchilla. You know, the most wonderful memory I have of Queen Elizabeth was at the Royal Command performance. I played You Made Me Love You, and the audience started singing. And it was the first time that the Royal Command performance had ever been televised. And the television cameras pointed up to the royal box, and on that television show, Queen Elizabeth was heard and seen singing, You Made Me Love You. I didn't want to do it. The Chopin piano was part of an estate that I came across in my travels, and it belonged to a privately owned museum. And in order to get this piano, I had to buy out the whole museum. I didn't want to do it, but I did. Everybody knows I collect pianos, but I think you'd probably be interested in seeing the Rolls Royce, the only one in the world that's red, white, and blue. It was designed for the bicentennial in 1976. And I had to get special permission to make it red, white, and blue from the Rolls Royce company. Now you're going to tell me you didn't have any film in the camera. Okay, thank you.
It was Paderewski who influenced Liberace in the single usage of his name. Use the one name, boy. He did, even to the point of having it legalized by the court. Managing to collect more than 50 different automobiles he used both on and off stage.
Well, I love cars. I love driving them myself, you know. Sometimes I put my dogs in the back seat, you know, and everybody, when they see a limousine go by, they always look in the back, you know, to see who's in the car, you know, some celebrity. And I'll be driving, and the dogs will be in the back, see. I got 12 dogs, so sometimes I fill the back seat with my dogs. I chauffeur them around.
Awards, photos, and other memorabilia is displayed in the Celebrity Gallery.
Hi folks, thank you for joining us at Liberace's Foundation for the Performing and Creative Arts. I'm going to pass a little information on to you that we hope will make your visit with us more enjoyable. You're standing in the ballroom of Liberace's Tivoli Gardens restaurant. It's a gourmet restaurant that he opened in 1983, closed shortly after his death in 1987. All of the items that you see in these display cases along the floor are gifts to Liberace from other people. The costumes that you see on the walls, each took a year to make. They're all individually done by hand, all hand sewn, all by the same designer. His name is Michael Travis. The furs that you see in the front of the room in the climate-controlled area average in weight from 140 to 200 pounds. The furniture that you see in this gallery is beautiful antiques from Liberace's Palm Springs home. After you've viewed everything that you'd like to here in the ballroom, folks, you come to the back of the room, down to your right, behind that glass, into Liberace's apartment. The living room of the apartment is now a gift shop, and you go back onto the sidewalk to visit the gallery that he opened in 1979. If you have any individual questions that you'd like to ask me while you're in here, don't hesitate to come up to me. I'll be glad to help you. We'd also like for you to know that $250,000 a year goes in scholarships from this foundation. 26 schools and universities throughout the country are receiving the money. You may not take photographs, folks. We'd like to have you browse at your leisure. Thank you once again for coming. Enjoy yourselves.
Well, look me over. I didn't get dressed like this to go unnoticed. You want to know something? When you wear costumes like these, you have to be very careful how you sit down. No kidding, if the beads are turned the wrong way, it's murder. One bead will do it. Well, here I have done a couple of numbers, and you want to know something? I'm warm already. So you know what I was thinking? Why don't I slip out and get into something more spectacular? What do you think? All right? Okay. Well, now, what do you think? It's a little different. You know, ladies and gentlemen, as you can imagine, I take a lot of kidding about my costumes. And of course, you know, I only wear them on the stage, you know, when I'm doing a show. I never wear them on the street like some people think. Oh, God, I'd be picked up for sure. Okay.
George Liberace, admittedly a strong influence on his brother Walter's career, isn't forgotten either. On view is a collection of photos, awards, and many other interesting items presented and collected during his career.
We've seen his cars, his furs, his furniture, and other items in this unbelievable collection. But there's more to be found in the library. Meet Patricia Jarvis, librarian. May I call you Pat?
Sure.
Pat, I asked Bill Folsom the same question. What is the first question visitors ask when they arrive here?
Usually, what is his name and a little bit about his family.
And what's their reaction?
Well, some of them get kind of mad at me when they don't realize he's got another brother besides George and a sister.
You know, one of the things I noticed about a library is you got to have books and other materials in abundance. And I don't see a lot of that here. Just what is it you do?
Did you ever try to go through 50 years of scrapbooks, newspaper, and magazine articles and put it all together to figure out what he did?
Pat, you know, I expect this to be a monumental task getting it all together, but once it is it available to the public?
Yeah, what's done now is available, and they can come in here and just take a look at it and ask for different dates, and I'll do what I can for them.
Patricia Jarvis, librarian for the Liberace Museum. You know, it takes a special person to care and administer to the needs of this operation. And that's who we're going to meet right now. Credit for the overall operation of this display of memorabilia can be given to Dora Liberace, sister-in-law of Liberace and wife of Liberace's brother George. Dora, thanks for visiting with us.
It's my pleasure, Murray.
When did the museum first open?
We opened in 1979, Easter Sunday, which was April the 15th. That's easy to remember.
If I remember correctly, didn't Liberace also open his Hollywood Hills home to the public too?
He did, but because of a zoning problem, parking situation, and the neighbors, it had to be closed.
Dora, I think one of the most exciting things that comes out of the museum is the Foundation for the Performing and Creative Arts. What is that?
We give grants to the different colleges throughout the United States, and of course the colleges and the institutions that we are funding, they pick out the recipients for the scholarships.
And where does the money come from?
Well, of course, our museum is the funding arm for the foundation, has been for over 10 years. And through the generosity of my late brother-in-law, of course, he left 90% of his estate to the foundation.
Dora, are there any restrictions to these selections for the scholarships? Do they all have to be piano players or ballet dancers?
Well, it is restricted to music and the performing arts.
Dora, you've been very gracious. But a final question. Vaju Valentino Liberace, Walter Liberace, pianist, Walter Buster Keys, Mr. Showmanship. Dora, how do you think Liberace would like to be remembered?
I think he would like to be remembered as a great entertainer, and he was a very private person when it came to helping. He didn't want other people to know what he did for other people, but I think a great humanitarian.
The song has ended, but the melody lingers on. Liberace's no longer with us, or is he?
There's more than a melody that remains. His influence and dedication to the world of entertainment, his sincerity and kindness, and a belief, as he put it, most of the time it's not so much what we've done in the past, but what we haven't done that we regret.
Mr. Showmanship will always be remembered.
I'll be seeing you in all the old familiar places that this heart of mine embraces all day through. In that small cafe, the park across the way. Oh, I feel like the Pope. The children's carousel, the chestnut trees, the wishing well. Thank you. I'll be seeing you in every lovely summer's day, in everything that's warm and gay. I'll always think of you that way. I'll find you in the morning sun, and when the night is new, I'll be looking at the moon, but I'll be seeing you.